Welcome to the Embodiment Matters podcast with me, Erin Rabke, and my beloved Carl Rabke. We don't have the luxury of living in ordinary times, but rather we live in extraordinary ones where the way we live in the next decade will make a huge difference in the future of life on planet Earth. We aspire in this tapestry of rich conversations drawn from a variety of wise perspectives to share resources to help you embody the wisdom, compassion, and skillful actions that are needed during these times. You can find out more about our classes and sign up for our newsletter at embodimentmatters.com. You can also become a supporting member of our podcast with a small monthly donation. Look for Embodiment Matters at patreon.com. Hello, friends. It's Erin here, and I'm so excited to share this podcast episode with you. Carl and I had the great pleasure and honor of talking with Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer, extraordinary poet and huge-hearted human being. And I want to give you the warning that you may want to have tissues nearby to listen to this conversation. I definitely had salt trails all over my cheeks by the end, actually, and quite at the beginning of this beautiful conversation with Rosemerry. She reads many gorgeous poems from her recent book called The Unfolding. We talk about, advice for meeting people in grief. In case you're not familiar, Rosemerry is a prolific and generous poet. She's been writing a poem a day and sharing it publicly for many years. You can find and subscribe to that at her website, 100fallingveils.com. Several years ago, her teenage son died of suicide, and after taking 49 days off in her grieving process, she came back to writing daily again. And what a gift her poetry is to so many of us living in that stretch of ruin and beauty, of heartache and love of life. I just can't recommend Rosemary's work and this conversation highly enough. It is so beautiful, and I'm so excited for you to listen to it. Rosemary's main website is wordwoman.com. You can find out a lot more about her there and at 100 Falling Veils. I also want to mention that I'm super excited because Rosemerry is going to be one of our extraordinary guest teachers at a 10-week course my dear friend Leilani Navar and I are going to be hosting starting on January 19th, 2025. We would love to have you join us. The class is called Take Heart, Embodying the Great Turning, and Rosemerry is going to be joining us along with Cynthia Jors. May have listened to the wonderful podcast we did with her recently. Frances Weller, who we've interviewed several times on this podcast, and the wonderful Lydia Violet Hartunian will be with us as well. Enjoy the episode, and thanks so much for listening. As always, you can find out more about us and our offerings at embodimentmatters.com. You can also join our Patreon to support our podcast. It's at patreon.com/embodimentmatters. We are grateful for every contribution and appreciate your listening. Thanks so much for being here.
So welcome, Rosemerry. It's so good to have you here. And we've both been looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. It is my joy to be with you both.
I've been, we've been following you for so many years and reading your generous, abundant work. And I've just spent the morning diving in again to the new book, The Unfolding, and All the Honey, and previous books, but these two I had out this morning, and I'm already weepy and in tears and just so excited to be in conversation with you. And I wonder if you would read, to start, this is from All the Honey, Love Like Water, to just take us right in.
Okay, this is Love Like Water. We could say the pain was a block so great it could not be moved. We could say love did not try to move it. Love simply surrounded the mass and dissolved it, the way water meets a block of salt, breaking apart each ionic bond until every atom of sodium and chloride is surrounded by molecules of water. And in this way, and sooner than you'd think, the pain was rearranged into minuscule bits. And there was no part of the pain that was not touched by love. The pain was no less, it's true. But mixed with love, dispersed, the pain became something new, something vital that encouraged a different kind of life, a substance that supported buoyancy, an essential medium to carry me.
Mm. Just want to take a breath and let that land. I want to tell you that I read that poem at the end of our a 3-day grief ritual we did in the late summer, and I love that poem and all your poems. The courage of not trying to move it and change it and be changed by it is so woven through all your work in such a magnificent way. And I just want to, I'm going to just cry through the whole of our conversation, I'm sure, but
I will too, friend. We'll do it together.
okay, it's great. Just abundant praise, our dear friend Francis Weller, often teaching about grief, talks about how, that essential move toward becoming an elder is letting your grief, instead of make your heart embittered, become medicine that you offer back to the community. And oh, Rosemary, you do that so generously. So thank you. All praise.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. That poem was written out of a very real kind of embodied experience that I had very shortly, and by very shortly I mean within a few days of my son dying, my son Finn, who chose to take his life in August of 2021. I remember a lot, but one of the things I remember so strongly after he died was this sense that that when love came in, and it did come in like water, I remember it very clearly coming as more like a tidal wave than like a just a gentle thing, but it was as if it didn't take away any of the pain, but it touched it all. It
Mm,
was like every molecule of pain, if pain were a mass, which sometimes it feels like a weight, doesn't it? It was as if all of the pain was every single molecule was surrounded by love, so that love contacted every single bit of the pain, so that there was no less pain,
mhm,
but that it was made bearable, made buoyant, made possible to not be crushed because of that. And it was so hard to try and find the language to express that. It was something that was so in my body and somehow even very visual, but so beautiful. And so I thought about this, how water dissolves salt, and how it just that the way that the molecules are actually working, which I actually love science and science metaphors. And in fact, the form of this poem, if you saw it in the book, you would see that my little secret is that it's got it looks like little two lines and then one line indented, two lines and one line indented. And it was water molecules, it's little H2Os. So the
mm.
hydrogens are indented two lines and the oxygen was
Mm.
indented eight lines. I don't know. It's like my little secret about that poem. If you look at it on the page, it's water molecules.
Yeah, I actually remember when Erin read that in the ritual, this visceral sense of that happening in the room. All of this pain, all of this anguish that people had been bringing, and just the way that it was held, and this like alchemical process of not trying to change, not trying to fix, not trying to resolve, but something being worked on, something transformed and just at the same time, that space for things to be just as they are.
Yeah, beautifully said, Carl. I'm so glad that came through.
Mm,
That, that experience was there present for you too.
mm. Thank you for that. We have followed your work for years before your son died and then after. And I just find it so courageous and inspiring how you took a break and then came back to writing from that state. So clearly, what do I want to say? Not only your poetry practice, and I want to talk about that, your daily practice of writing is so inspiring to me. Um, but your heart practice, of really letting life open your heart and then taking that deeper, in this grief journey is so beautiful. Um, can I ask you to read another poem? And I do have the page number for this one. Uh, the Prayers, page 53.
This one, I'll just say about this poem that there were, it was this prayer that I had. Open me has been a prayer I've had for a long, long time. I remember the first time I I dared to pray that way. It was during a time when I thought, it felt like everything had fallen apart. Things that I thought I knew about myself were not true. Things I thought about the way the world was felt just one of those moments where just, it was life was tough. Life was tough. And I remember at that time writing well, my kids and I were playing in a sandbox, and I took little stones out of the sand and wrote the words, open me, in the sand.
Mm.
And I remember my spiritual teacher, Joy Sharp, said, oh, oh, that's a big prayer. So the prayers. When I asked the world to open me, I did not know the price. When I wrote that 2-word prayer in the sand, I did not know loss was the key, devastation the hinge. Trust was the dissolution of the idea of a door. When I asked the world to open me, I could never have said yes to what came next. Perhaps I imagined the waves knew only how to carry me. I did not imagine they would also pull me under. When I asked the world to open me, I had not imagined drowning was the way to reach the shore. The waves of sorrow dragged me down with their tides of unthinkable loss. The currents emptied my pockets, stripped me of my ideas. I was rolled and eroded and washed up on the sand like driftwood, softened. I sprawled there and wept, astonished to still be alive. It is not easy to continue to pray this way. Open me. And yet it is the truest prayer I know. The other truest prayer, though sometimes I long to reject its truth, is thank you.
We're gonna have to have your tissues ready. We start listening to this episode. Oh, streaming down my face. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for feeling that poem. Thank you for letting it be real for you and not just words on a page, which is certainly how poems are for me. There's so much. I mean, I love language. I love language. That's why I'm a poet. But the 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 practice really for me, what I hope more than anything to do is just touch what's true. Just touch it. Just let it. Like when you tap on a gong and tap, 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 tap. But if you could just tap, 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 tap long enough, soon there's this enormous shimmer.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's kind of what it's like with writing poems. It's like tap, 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 tap. And if I can just touch the truth enough, soon it like in my whole body, I feel that kind of that
Mhm.
energetic beauty waves of it, that kind of, wow, oh, that's it, that's it. It's usually more like that too. It's
Yeah.
less like a lightning bolt and more like the gong shimmer.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it feels
About
like
this
that.
poem, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that it feels like that's the role of poets, and you embody that so beautifully to, especially with English language, because it can tend to uh, not be as like bringing to the point of depth and connection, and you just each of your poems is so visceral and so true, and brings like to the deeper currents that often aren't touched in everyday speech and in everyday perception, and the way a poem can just like whoosh bring you down to what's real. I love your work for that.
Thank you. That's my experience with poems too, right? Is the just, in fact, this poem came out of an experience I had with another poem. I was doing a poetry deep dive with the absolutely incredible Kim Rosen, and she was reciting Langston Hughes' poem, Wave of Sorrow. I wonder if I have it from memory. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island. Its sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there.
Mm.
And she was reciting it, and there was Jamie Sieber's cello music in the background, and it's online, so we were dancing the poems. So I was dancing this poem, and I remember just be letting the wave of sorrow just kind of move me across the room, and I felt it so profoundly, and this poem came out of that experience of feeling, the effects of the open me prayer, but also very much in conversation with that poem and with the way that Kim Rosen was sharing it, and how it just took me all the way. I mean, I did drown. I feel like I really did drown. It feels like I really, when someone that we love dies, part of us dies. We do go all the way under, but then we get spit out on the island somehow still alive.
Mm. Mm. Um, I think I might weave a few questions into what I'll ask, and you can just respond however you like. Um, I heard you speak on your podcast with Tara Brock, which was wonderful, about your practice and writing something true as the core of what you're doing. I'm in awe of how not only are you in that practice, seems like every day, but you share with us what comes of it. And I'm wondering if you want to speak about one, having a practice, your practice, how that looks for you. And also, how do I want to say this? Something about having a practice, before the awful tragedy that happened in your life, and then how that could carry you after. And I'm also thinking about that, for our own lives, but the state of the world right now, having a practice that we can grow roots in that then might carry us through really challenging times. So, wherever you want to go with all of that.
Right. All of that. So I- I'll say this, that the daily poetry practice began as a poetry practice. It really did begin being about writing poems. And by the way, it started as a 30-day challenge, which I didn't think I could possibly do. There was no way I thought I could write a poem a day for 30 days. But I wanted to try, and the invitation was to choose two other people to do it with you, because one person will flake out. So maybe two of you will be standing at the end. as it is, we loved it. The two women that I did it with loved it. We did it for 90 days from the equinox to the solstice. Then they stopped, but I never did. In the beginning, it really was about writing poems, which is to say, I wanted to write better poems. I wanted it to be good. I wanted to be a good poet. What shifted for me, the irony, and I don't know how long this shift took, but it became immediately apparent that I couldn't write something good every day. So I had to change what I was doing. If I couldn't write something good every day, I could at least write something true every day. And so that became the new imperative. It, it's interesting to me then how that opened up a whole world that I had no idea that I wanted to step into, which was, in fact, if anything, I laugh now because I have a strong memory of telling my spiritual teacher some years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago, I'm just not all that interested in truth. I was like, I mean, it's funny to me now, but I remember saying it partly because she was like, oh, oh. And now it's everything. Now it's all that I wanted. Now I'm like, what is just being curious about what is the truth and what are the many ways that it plays out? How does it open and open and open for us? When I shifted then to that, what is true, and as I like to say, every poem is written out of asking this question, what's the next true thing? What's the next true thing? Which can be invented, right? I don't mean that it can't be imaginary. There's a poem in The Unfolding about joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or, my alter ego, Wild Rose, dances on tables with God. Like these things aren't really happening. This is imaginary, but they're true in that I'm writing them because they have that gong resonance we were talking about earlier, not because I'm trying to sound good. And in fact, I'm quite clear that I don't write at all for an audience. When I'm sitting down and writing it, I write really for this practice of what is here, what's inside me, the feelings, what's outside of me, all of experience, and how does a poem and writing the poem become a bridge between these two worlds? Knowing that so much of what is here will not be an answer, right? It'll be a question, it'll be something mysterious. And knowing that if we can write something true, the chances are that we could write its opposite and it will be equally true. And in this way, paradox, um, I feel like paradox does this most beautiful work on us where it opens us up completely. There's a poem in All the Honey, maybe I'll read it just by way of explaining or illustrating this.
Mm.
And it's and then I'll come back to talking about the practice, but I feel like this poem shows is an illustration of some of the work that I want to talk about. This is called Two Truths. He is dead, never again to pull on the fencing mask, moonwalk to his bedroom, or snuggle on the couch. Not dancing on the stage. He is dead. Not spinning the gator through the field, not graphing equations for pleasure. Is he dead? Asks the heart. No. He lives on forever. In the scent of lemon, in the cloudy ice on the pond, in the buds of the lilac tree, in the song on my breath. He lives in blue sky and comet and field. He lives in ink and in spaces between. He is dead. I held his unbreathing body in my arms. Since that day, he has never left me. He is alive forever. So I feel like the beauty is to take a truth, he's dead, and then write the opposite of it. No, he's alive forever. Or, in the beautiful work of Byron Katie, her work with finding reversals, we could also say, I am dead. He is alive, I am alive. Like you just take all the ways that you could
Mm.
find it. And in this way, I feel like the spaciousness comes in to our whole life, to our whole way of seeing the world. It takes us out of our little story and opens up
Mm.
the options for much, much bigger stories. And this is why I feel like a daily poetry practice has had such a profound effect on how I meet the world. And it became apparent fairly quickly. And by fairly quickly, I mean, after a few years, that it wasn't about poems anymore. It was about how I met every moment. That
Mm.
was the real practice.
Yeah.
Having a practice on a page changed everything about living off of the page. So that you can't have that without, I can't have that without the poetry practice. That's primary, is what allows for the other practice. This was really clear to me then when Finn died, and I didn't write at all for 49 days. But I still showed up. I still wanted to show up. I
Mm.
still had the practice of showing up. I still had that longing to be opened. I still had wonder and curiosity as a driving force. So that even though it was the hardest chapter for sure of my life so far, it also had this mm, gift in it that I wanted to meet it, as awful as it was, and taught me so much then. All the lessons I didn't ever want, but have been really helpful, have been mind blowing, have been life changing, I suppose. But so yes, I think this is not just possible with poetry, although I know it's possible with poetry, but I'm guessing this is also possible with any kind of contemplative, mindful practice. If you do it every day, you don't do it because you're going to need it later. You do it because you need it now. But I think the truth is that it does have an effect on us when we need it most. It's we're, I don't want to say prepared, no, but we have some tools to help us stay present.
Yeah, and it's like the setting the soil conditions for that prayer of open, that the writing to the truth and writing to the opposite and holding paradox like it stretches that capacity of attention.
Yeah, beautifully said, Carl.
Mm. You mentioned one of the poems that was on my list to have you read, which is so fantastic. Word Woman joins the MCU. Would you read that? I love the range you carry, and this, we're right in the depths, and now we're going to go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they're also not opposite the way these go together. I'd love you to read that one.
um, Thank you. I mean, I do think about, when this particular poem, Word Woman Joins the MCU, is in the new book, and it's in a chapter called Sarum, which is the joy that rises. All the book is made of 4 chapters. All of them are words that I've made up, and maybe just kind of nuanced language for praise. And this particular one is in a chapter called Sarum, which is sorrow plus Om. Om is, the Hindu affirmation for, uh, well, it's an affirmation. And I say that it's the paradoxical praise for beauty, love, strength, and connection that can only emerge as we wrestle with devastation and grief and the worries and pains of daily living. It's a positive side effect of the surrender and trust in life and in death. And so, yeah, I mean, that, of course, that's serious, but it can also be playful, which we're about to see. So if anybody listening doesn't know the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that would be Yeah, the Hulk and Black Widow and Black Panther and Ant-Man and Iron Man is my personal favorite. And other things you might need to know for the poem. Stan Lee is the creator of Marvel Comics. He always, while he was alive, would show up in the movies in a little bit part. And then the Russo brothers are the ones who made the Marvel movies for a long time. So this is Word Woman joins the MCU. Long after the Avengers have obliterated Thanos, and Ant-Man has saved the quantum realm, and the vibranium is secured by Wakanda, and the Guardians of the Galaxy protect the universe again, the Russo brothers return to the silver screen with their newest hero, Word Woman, disguised as a middle-aged mother and wife. She wields a pen, a journal, a library of slender books. No one would ever suspect she could be a hero, least of all her. Heck, she can't even keep the rodents out of her garden, much less root the evil out of the world. Audiences yawn as they watch her sit at her kitchen counter in her slouchy sweater and wool slippers for hours. Where's the action? Someone shouts as he gets up for another bucket of buttered popcorn. And that's when Stan Lee shows up as the UPS man, shocking everyone as he delivers her a copy of Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. Cut to the next scene. She's in a black pleather bodysuit, wearing lots of mascara and a dark ponytail high on her head, streaked with silver. She is ripped and ready to do what it takes to make peace. Was that Neruda? Someone whispers in the front aisle as she slings poems one after another, stunning her enemies into silence. I think Amakai, someone says, or Shihab Nye. And when the movie is over, most people are grumbling that superheroes just aren't what they used to be. But in the back, a young girl is scribbling words on a napkin. She is ready to save the world.
It's so good. That would be my favorite movie.
Yeah, and I just love I mean, so many of these stretches, so many of these paradoxes, but the essential nature of play and humor and lightness. And I know I've found for myself, the more I've gone into this realm of grief work and bearing witness, the more essential play and spontaneity and lightness is that they really need each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even sing to each other, right? I think you're so right, Carl. Which sometimes I think people are often surprised. I remember one of the things people would say to me, people say strange things when you're grieving. They long to be helpful and say really unhelpful things. and, and one thing I remember people would say, you will laugh again, you will smile again. And I would prickle a little bit and be like, I'm I am smiling now. Like I am smiling. Like it was just that was of all the things people said, whatever, why is that the one that bothered me? But I think it was in part, Carl, because of this. I think that somehow it's almost like we think you can have only one emotion at a time. Like you're sad and that's it. That there's not a sense of possibility and playfulness and love and I think that I'm not saying that that isn't also true. Of course it is, and that all griefs are different and everyone carries grief differently. And everyone is slammed by grief differently. I think to some degree we lose so much of somehow all of our agencies at some points. Um, so maybe I'm lucky that was still available to me to just to feel like that was still in the realm of possibility, but it was I know the truth that it is available. I guess I'll just say it that way. I know it is available to us in these most desperate moments that all of a sudden we can start laughing when something silly happens, and what a relief that is to realize, oh, we can still laugh.
Mhm.
Mm.
I'd like to read a poem of yours that expresses this. This is one that has been such a teacher, and it is for when people ask. I want a word that means okay and not okay. A word that means devastated and stunned with joy. I want the word that says, I feel it all at once. The heart is not like a songbird singing only one note at a time, more like a Tuvan throat singer, able to sing both a drone and simultaneously two or three harmonies high above it. A sound, the Tuvans say, that gives the impression of wind swirling among rocks. The heart understands the swirl, how the churning of opposite feelings weaves through us like an insistent breeze, leads us wordlessly deeper into ourselves, blesses us with paradox, so we might walk more openly into this world so rife with devastation, this world so ripe with joy.
So good.
Mm.
Mm.
It's nice to hear it in your voice too. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Mm.
Just that feeling all of it all at once. And that's a wish I often have for myself and others is just to stretch that capacity of what we can hold.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that stretching. And I feel like it is the paradox that does the stretching. In me, I feel it, right? It's so clear to me in my body. I think of it. I wrote a poem years and years ago about it being like two sumo wrestlers, and inside me, they're like bouncing around, like, and somehow just their movement in me is what's creating this more space inside. They force, a larger space to happen. Yeah. I think that poem comes out of the impossible question, how are you? When, when, what are you supposed to say? It's such a setup, that question, but I'm happy, but I'm sad. I'm sad, but I'm happy. I'm okay. I'm not okay. And then the magnitude of that, right? How it can just feel like that those two opposites reach infinitely. They go all the way off the scales and keep going. That's
Mhm.
how bad it can get. That's how amazing it can be.
I'm curious because I've got the Rilke line now, like we don't have much knowledge yet in grief culturally. And there are so many, I hear a lot of this, people in their grief um, don't like a lot of what comes to them as people trying to be helpful or comfortable. And do you have something, I know it's unique for everyone, as I know you know, but suggestions or please don't say this, or this is a nice way you might approach someone when they're grieving?
Boy, I, I do. Maybe you guys could chime in too. Maybe you also have some ideas about this. Um, Maybe I'll just tell you about what was the most helpful for me was, and it blew my mind really. Mirabai Starr, who's just a beautiful writer and human, and I think even healer. Uh, we had a mutual friend who put us together, and Mirabai agreed to meet with me online for an hour, and I was nervous, oh my gosh, why, why Mirabai Starr, she's going to talk to me. What am I going to, like there was just a nervousness about her anyway, because she's Mirabai Starr. And then there was also, I think, I didn't know what to say, what to do. But when we got online, the first thing she did was light a candle, and she said, "What is Finn's full name?" So I told her. See, I'll cry even now thinking of it. So she said his name, Fintilo Trommer, and lit a candle. And then she said, I'll let it burn all day. And I couldn't believe the generosity of that, of saying his name, which was, that's all I wanted to hear, really. Just to have his name be given back to me, and then to light this candle and imagine that it would just stay lit. What a gift that was. I could hardly imagine it. What a simple act. There was, let's notice what there wasn't. There was no advice. There was no comforting. There was no question except what was his name. Like it was just very, very simple, meeting me where I was, saying the beloved's name, lighting a candle. And then truly, she just sat and received me and somehow transmitted love. So every now and then, maybe she did ask a question or had a comment, but she didn't talk much about her own experience. She didn't push. She just sat and let me show up however I was going to show up and gave me her full attention. It was profound. It was profound. So that's one way to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I love when you said, let's notice what there was not. Not advice, not comforting.
No
Yeah.
platitude. She didn't try to make it better or tell me it would get better. She didn't tell me I was doing it right or wrong. She just met me right where I was, and that was all. And
Mm,
that was everything.
mm, so important. Thank you for sharing that story. It's really moving.
Yeah, still to me, clearly. What has something that you've noticed, that a way to meet someone else in grief that feels like you're really being met or like another person feels really met?
Yeah. Well, I guess what I already said about being really clear about what's absent, not trying to fix it, not offering those platitudes, not pretending it's not in the room, as a huge, heavy presence. Um, yeah, that being with listening, without fixing, um, without rising above, all those. I guess it's my experience is more saying the same thing, but being really explicit about what we're not doing. You know, um, people don't want to be fixed, right? Or cheered up. I mean, that's such an impulse,
Mm.
I think, for people who are uncomfortable with someone else's grief or their own grief. There's such a knee-jerk impulse to um, tidy it up somehow or make it a little better. And I just feel like it bears repeating again and again. That's really not helpful. It's really not helpful. So something, you know, I say to myself because my inner life likes humor. Not that I have that impulse often anymore with people, but when there's some impulse, I just say, down girl, just like feel the ground inside myself, like just be here with that. And I think that's, yeah, potentially helpful to just down girl ourselves and be with in that courageous, open, receptive, compassionate, non-fixing quality of presence.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it feels like the quality of presence that you were describing with Mirabai Star was just what we started with that poem around water and salt, that just to be present and receive and soften without trying to fix or alter or shift, but to let something happen in that with love being present toward all that's there.
Yeah, with love being present. I think that was a clear, this is the other thing that I was able to do for myself was I was really clear that no one was out to get me. So when people did say things that were careless or, I really trusted that they were doing the very best they could, that they had the very best intentions when they said this thing that, oh, you'll laugh again. That was the one that just somehow got me the most. But, when people would say things, I would think to myself, what they really mean is, I love you.
Mm.
And I just let myself retranslate anything anyone said or didn't say or did or didn't do. I just let it all mean I love you. And I really trusted there was not one person who had it in for me, who
Yeah.
wasn't wishing me love. So that's not what they didn't write me a card to be mean. They didn't write me a card to set me up, right? They wrote me a card to say, I love you.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about you. This is hard, and I wish that it wasn't so hard for you.
Mm. You know, we started talking about this right before I hit record, but I want to come back to it because you're so courageously vulnerable and so generous in sharing your poetry. In case listeners don't know, every day you send a poem that I'm just in awe of that on so many levels. Um, but as I said when we started, I could imagine so many people feel like you're their best friend because you take us right into the depths of our own heart by sharing yours. And I'm so curious about your own experience or what you want to say of this kind of full heart on display for strangers around the world to meet you there. How is that for you? It's like such a courageous vulnerability practice.
Do you know, so Erin, I could never have done it. I think of it now, like what it is now. I couldn't have ever started where it is now, right? I started by sending my poem every day to two people, like I told you. I sent it every day to two people. I did that for 90 days. When they stopped writing, I kept sending it every day to them. I think they were really done with it, probably. They were like, will you stop sending poems already, Rosemerry? But but I did and it was for years, it was just the two of them. Then it was another person, and then another, then it was 10 people. Then I had four email addresses because I had to send them out 49 at a time so that I wouldn't get marked as a spammer. Then I was getting marked as a spammer, so I finally had to figure out MailChimp. Definitely my output, I didn't have a clue technologically what I was supposed to be doing. And anyway, it 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 just built slowly. So I think like any practice, if you like grief itself or like weightlifting, you do it just a little first, you just start really small and then it's more and then it's more and now you're stronger. And I think that's really how it's happened with this too, where I feel like every, I just had a freak out about 6 months ago where I thought, oh my God, you're sending this out to this many people? Oh my God. And that realization kind of compounded on itself. It was like, and you do that every day? Oh my God. I really freaked myself out about it. But I think now I just don't know how to do it any differently. And I'm grateful for it being the way it is. But I do laugh about it sometimes. And it's true that people sometimes do think that they know me or, and what let's be clear, though I write every day and I am very open-hearted about what I share, there's a lot I also don't share. There's a lot people don't know about what's going on with me, and then people make certain assumptions or it's yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I just will keep offering praise and gratitude for, you know, stepping over continually whatever the maybe inner objections to that practice are, because what a gift to the world. And just, I wonder if you might say something about what how do you describe what is a poetic orientation to the world? Carl and I read each other. One of our favorite things to do is like, okay, let's go. This is the poetry bookshelf, and each take five random ones and just sit and read poems to each other. I'm so poems are moving around in me, other people's poetry. They just float around in my mind. I'm so grateful for that, and it really changes how I am in the world. But I would love to hear you just talk about um, a poetic orientation and how poetry, reading, writing, seeing poetically, um, can be a helpful practice.
Mhm. Well, first of all, talk about gorgeous practices. Let's grab 5 books off the shelves and read poems to each other. That is so beautiful, Carl and Erin. I can't even believe how much I love that. And second, I've seen some of your just gorgeous poems out in the world, Erin. So I know that you also could be answering this question. In fact, maybe will you do it after I do? That'd be nice. So I'm just going to put that invitation out there to what do you think it is to look through the world and what is a poetic way of being? The first thing that comes to mind though is I suppose presence, just a willingness to show up. That that at the most base, it's a willingness to show up, not to be reaching out, which is maybe the next level, which would be curiosity, wonder. Awe might be the next level, what comes from curiosity and wonder. And maybe even praise comes after that, like the willingness to say thank you for the things that emerge. But I feel like at the very heart of it is just a practice of showing up, of wonder, of just, okay, I'm here, this sense of receptivity. I love what happens when I sit down with a blank page and I have no idea what will happen. I love that. It used to terrify me. I was so afraid of it. In fact, I wouldn't sit down until I knew already what I had something to start because I didn't want to just sit there with blank. Now I freaking love the blank. I love
Mm.
it. I love sitting there with nothing until something happens. That's magic. That's real magic, right? That's every day, real magic. There was nothing. Now there's something. I love that. And I think, but that there's that, it starts with that receptivity. We think we say, you need to find your voice. The poetry is all about voice. I think it's all about our ears. It's all about listening. It's really a listening practice primarily. And then the voice comes next, but first the listening, first the receptivity. What do you think?
Well, I just want to say you're giving me so much courage in how you're talking about it because I feel like, oh, I could do that. I don't identify as a poet. I have friends who, do deep study of craft, and I actually have been reading poetry since I'm a teenager, and I feel protective of my relationship with poetry against academia. Like, do not get in between me and how this is opening my heart. I don't care if it fits your list of what means a good poem. I, my inner compass just zings me with what is true and takes me right into what you described so beautifully. And those of you who can't see us because you're listening, this just gesture of stretching in the chest, this opening, um, that can be, you find the vastness through the micro or vice versa. I love that. And excuse me, I I wouldn't call myself a poet. I feel terrified of that. Not terrified, but just exactly what I said around like, I don't want the education that would get between me and that stretch, that heart opening experience. Um, and sometimes, I guess when I've taken a stab at writing something someone might call a poem, it's just shorter than my normal verbosity of my writing. I'm going to take a drink, sorry. And I was actually noticing and so impressed in the unfolding I don't think one poem is longer than a page. How do you do that?
Well, I do value efficiency. That is one reason I think I'm drawn to poems. Uh, I want to say something about this play between poetry and how do we tell what's true, right? How do we let it be this glorious heart unfolding, heart opening enterprise? And how can the craft of poetry be a part of that also, which I really deeply believe it can. And I, like anything, right? If we take it as you know, and it becomes strict, and we, I think that you can take the craft, and and if we take only craft and we don't bring in that first part of what is true, right? And that whole glorious, yummy, exploratory present piece, then we end up with something empty and shiny. But if we take all those, if we take rhythm, if we take rhyme, so this is how poetry becomes music, right? And if we take repetition, and this is how poetry becomes, you know, sacred chant. And if we take image, and this is how poetry becomes something vital and alive. If we take all these elements, and if we take a form, right? Which is how you give yourself something to struggle against and make meaning from, and break and make meaning from the breaking. When we do that, I think this is where it gets really exciting, because in this way, we can allow all of that craft information to push us even into deeper truths, into more meaning, into more, but it happens when we allow it to be play. This is, and I think in order for it to be played, that you need enough fluency, you need to have done it enough and have enough confidence to so that these tools are just there for you, you know, and so that, oh, the paradox again, right? Of you want to get all that. I I love that part of poetry. It's, in fact, I'm thrilled, obsessed, and ecstatic about that part of poetry. And it saddens me when that's the only part. It saddens me when all of a sudden that's prioritized, and all the truth gets sucked out of the room, and it's no longer about anything but making it polished and pretty, and uh who cares? Then who cares about, you know, that's, those are the poems that I look at. I'm like, well, huh? What? Why did you even bother? There's nothing there except you know, a form with some really nice words that jab at things. You know, I don't know. It play is the answer.
Hmm. I love how you talk about that. It gets me very excited. Um, yeah, to hear more of how you invite that from people. Um, I'm curious about, for people who want to have a practice, particularly maybe if they're working with grief, do you have an invitation, a simple invitation as a way to maybe if they're not yet in love with the blank page, but a little terrified, how to
Mm.
just gently approach this process?
Yeah, the easiest thing is this, and I do it with every time I teach a class about grief. We begin with, today grief is fill in the blank. And there, you can only do it right, whatever you do, right? You can fill it in with an adjective. Today grief is lonely. Today grief is um, like a friend. Today grief is, to me, when it gets most interesting is when, or it could be a verb, right? You know, today grief is, you know, running. Today grief is, but it could also be it could also invite a metaphor. Today grief is a tree. Today grief is a shadow. Today grief is, you know, I just look around the room, a pen, an eraser. In both the books that we've been reading from today, many of the poems began this way. You know, there's a poem about grief as an eraser, and grief as a chair, and grief as an earthworm, and there's so many of them. Uh, so what I like about that little today grief is one is that it's really easy. And if you just filled it in with one word, but if you did that every day, you would see how much grief changes.
Mm.
And you would also see how it invites something new each time you sit down with it. You can be curious. I mean, maybe you write the same thing over and over, but eventually you won't. And you're like, oh, it changed because it does. So
Mhm.
that's idea one, is just to play around with that. The other idea is to, I have lots of on my YouTube page, I have a YouTube channel where there's lots of different, I call them thought shops, but there's one called Grief and Grace, and I just read lots of poems about grief and talk about them, offer writing prompts. It's free. You could just go there and do it in your own time. And in this way, if you don't want to be in a group of people writing that doesn't feel safe for any reason, you could do it in your own living room and just see how that feels.
That's a beautiful offering. Mm, I love
I
that.
also do with Evermore, which is a gorgeous grief organization and bereavement organization. They do such good work in the world, really helping with legislation around bereavement. But I do writing workshops that are open. They're only $15, or if you need it free, it's free. And we do that every other month. So people could find those on Evermore's website or on my website, and you could write in a community, and we just talk about poems and do some writing and then share or not. And so there's, yeah, lots of ideas.
Mm, it's so wonderful. Um, I wonder if I can ask you, this is probably a big topic, but I just want to bring it up. You've used this phrase that's so gorgeous about dark praise. Will you talk a little bit about that?
So that particular Dark Praise is the title of a album of spoken word I did with the guitar player Steve Law. And all the poems that are in that album are poems that are exploring the dark and I guess I love this word. I didn't make it up, but I love it. Endarkenment, which, the opposite of enlightenment. And I just think about all the ways that the dark has been vilified. Right now, as we're doing this recording, it's almost the solstice. And, if you, even me, I remember I used to be like, the light, we're going to get back to the light, and as if it's a bad thing to be in all this darkness. And, and I remember the first time I really fell in love with the dark was through a poem, was with Rainer Maria Rilke. And he has this poem that, you darkness that I come from, I love you more than all the fires that fence in the world. And I remember being like, what? What? I love you? That's a possibility. And then Rumi, um, night goes back to where it was. Everyone returns home sometime night. When you get there, tell them how I love you. What? Really? I couldn't believe it. It was mind blowing for me to be in love with the dark. And then the more I considered it as a possibility, the more I began to kind of see that the dark is a time for dreams, the dark is a time for sensuality, is a time for intimacy, is a time for generation, is a time for surprising blossoming, is a time for, there's just so many ways that um, our senses are enlivened. I mean, there's so much the dark has to offer us. And I began to truly fall in love with the dark, started walking at night, which I absolutely love, walking in the dark. And, it's, I think, fairly safe where I live with the wildlife. But, I think that the invitation is to see how have we vilified one part, entire, like a whole section of you know the binary, and find ways to fall in love with it, not to not love the light too. I'm not saying I'm not against light, for heaven's sakes, but how do we fall in love with the dark? And it's thrilling, the things that happen in the dark.
Mm, I love that. Thank you.
Actually, I just wrote a poem about that last night. Do you want to hear it?
Of
We'd love
course.
to.
Let's see if I can find it pretty quick, I bet. Here it is. It's called Before Winter Solstice I Remember. This too is what we are born for, this waking in darkness, unable to see, but still able to hear the shush of wind in bare branches, able to feel the charge of our heartbeat, the swell of our belly as it fills with borrowed air. I have spent my life learning to love these shapeless hours before the light finds us, these shadowsome nights when my whole being seems to stretch beyond the bed, beyond the room, beyond the home, beyond the valley, beyond even the globe, as if I rhyme with the dark all around us, the dark that holds us, the dark that surrounds this whole swirling spiral of galaxy. Sometimes I feel how that infinite darkness calls to the darkness inside me, as if to say, remember, remember where you came from, remember what you are. And the darkness inside me sings back.
Amazing.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for talking about the dark.
Hmm.
Love it.
Well, I know we're getting close toward the end of our time, but I'd love to just hear, Rosemary, just any like edges or places where you're really lit up in life now, like projects or things that you've been considering. What's been alive for you?
Hmm. Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm in a constant state of lit up right now. Like this and this and this. Let's see. I mean, I think that one thing that I notice has shifted greatly for me over time is how I went from working very much alone to working in collaboration. And I love collaborating so much with all kinds of people. You know, I've done lots of collaborations recently with Kayleen Asbo, and we did a gorgeous project around the artwork of Vincent van Gogh, and just with her piano music and me writing poems and his artwork. And we've created a whole album actually called Love Letters to Vincent, which I think will be coming out this year. And it's all recorded and done. We just need to figure out what to do with it. Uh, you know, or collaborating with my friend Christy. We have a podcast, The Emerging Form, about creative process. You know, collaborating with my friend Sherry Reichert Ballou, and we do the Secret Agents of Change, which is this surreptitious kindness cabal, which is really fun. Or James Cruz and I collaborate now with a program called Stubborn Praise. I just feel like I just want to collaborate all the time now. I just want to let's play. What else can we do? You know, whether it's a musician or another poet or you know, somebody like Sherry, I don't even know what to call her. She's like a professional play person. Or heart play. You know, or Kayleen with piano, or Steve Law on the guitar with the album. We have a new album coming out about love, I think this next year. So it's just playing with other people and seeing what happens when you get together and how it makes it all so much better. Playing with other people. That's it. That's what's got me going.
Beautiful. All those seemed very lit.
Yeah, it is. It's just I'm in this kind of state of kind of constant amazement these days that things are how they are, you know, that I know that things are hard. Things are really hard. There are some really scary stuff happening in the world right now, which is maybe why these opportunities to play and see how amazing humans are and how creative and how resilient and how loveful people are.
Mm.
Just feel more surrounded with it than ever. Good, because it seems maybe more necessary than ever. But I'm so glad that's also alive for me right now as we meet these really difficult, frightening times together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. I want to say my dear friend Leilani and I are so excited to have you come teach as part of our Take Heart class in the new year too. Just, oh, I feel so lucky. So thank you for that also.
Yes, I'm so excited that's going to work out. That's going to be so much fun. Speaking of collaborating.
So excited about that. And I have a closing poem request, and it relates to just what you were talking about. And it's More Love, More Love. And it's from All the Honey, page 33.
The epigraph for this poem is from Rita Mae Brown. Sorrow is how we learn to love. If sorrow is how we learn to love, then let us learn. Already enough sorrow has been sown for whole continents to erupt into astonishing tenderness. Let us learn. Let compassion grow rampant like sunflowers along the highway. Let each act of kindness replant itself into acres and acres of widespread devotion. Let us choose love, as if our lives depend on it. The sorrow is great. Let us learn to love greater. Riotous love, expansive love, love so rooted, so common, we almost forget the world could look any other way.
May it be so.
Yeah.
May it be so. I just love you, Rosemary. I'm so grateful to know you, to be able to read your generous work. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you so much. It's very mutual, Erin, Carl. I just love seeing the work you do in the world. Love your wholeheartedness. Love your partnership. It's a joy to be with both of you and just to feel the energy between you two and to be pulled into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you enjoy this podcast, it's great if you want to share it with friends or post about it on social media. Also, you could make a donation to support the podcast or find out more information about our classes and offerings at our website, embodimentmatters.com.